So we'll go ahead and begin. Now, this book that we're reading today is called Breatharianism, Inedia, and Living Without Food, Frequently Asked Questions. Breatharianism, Inedia, and Living Without Food, Frequently Asked Questions. Now, this book is by an author named Peter Borecek. And if you didn't know who Peter Borecek is, don't be afraid. Don't feel bad. I didn't know who he was either. But they call him Peter the Breatharian, Peter Borecek. Peter has been on his Breatharian journey since 2003 and regularly gets asked questions regarding his opinion on other Breatharians like Jazz Maheen, Wiley Brooks, etc. And we're going to hear a lot of his answers for a lot of the questions that he has gotten asked on Peter's Breatharian journey. So we'll go ahead and begin. Chapter 1, Introduction. Breatharianism, aka Inedia. It's all the same concept. Inedia is from Latin, where it means fasting. And nowadays, it describes the ability to live without food. The word was first used to describe a fast-based lifestyle within Catholic tradition, which holds that certain saints were able to survive for extended periods of time without food or drink other than the Eucharist. Breatharianism is a related concept in which believers claim that food and possibly water are not necessary, and that humans can be sustained solely by prana, the vital life force in Hinduism. Or according to some, by the energy in sunlight, according to Ayurveda. Sunlight is one of the main sources of prana. I prefer the term breatharian and or breatharianism as it seems to be more commonly used, and it is in English, although the spell check still does not recognize it, apparently. And actually, fun fact, this book was written when? Hold on. I don't know when this book was written, but lately I've been seeing that spell check they're not really correcting me anymore. When I type in the word breatharian, they're recommending the word, so it's getting around. Some spell check is actually like, oh, okay, vegetarian, fruitarian, breatharian, I can see that. So years ago, breatharian, and breatharianism, when I was typing it in, it definitely was having that little red line underneath that little squiggle, that little squiggly line, like, wrong, right? This is not a word in the dictionary. But now it's being recognized, so I'm starting to see a new wave. The word breatharian may describe a person, while the word inedia may be used to describe the ability, concept, lifestyle. So anyway, being a breatharian does not mean that one would live on air or oxygen alone, as oxygen does not have any nourishing capabilities. You still need a nourishment, and that can come from the combination of water, oxygen, sunlight, and perhaps more importantly, from the vital life force. Whether we call it prana, term and the concept I prefer, or a cosmic force, God's energy, universal life force, etc. Again, in the end, all these terms describe one and the same thing. Something that we and even our scientist friends don't fully understand. But we do know one thing, and that is here. It is here all around us. Kind of like, that commercial, that surround sound, that Dolby surround, all around you. You ever been in the theater? All around you. That Dolby surround sound, that's prana. If you practice yoga, even here in the West, then you are going to hear the terms prana, life force, and so on. As you are going to work with it, use the chakras, etc. or if you're going to get a Reiki treatment, there again will be this universal energy in Reiki called simply Reiki. It is also the same difference, and it is precisely this so-called universal energy that can be accessed and for free. Come on now, show some love for the free. And you cannot OD, show some love for the free. Used as a food-free, fat-free, and addiction-free nourishment. Wow, interesting. Fat-free, I knew. Fat-free prana. Get your fat-free get your food-free, fat-free prana. Come and get it. You ever heard those people at the bakery? Fresh, come and get it. Right? That's prana. And in my humble opinion, I think it's about time we as a society give it a serious thought. I agree, Peter. I agree. So what exactly is Breatharianism? One of the best and short explanations is called a Breatharian concept intro. It was written by John McAlpin, who was running a Breatharian group on Yahoo. Wow, this must have been years ago. I exchanged few emails with him, but otherwise I do not know him. You can easily search for his intro on the internet and will find copies of it on several websites. Here is a short digest. Introduction to the Breatharian concept. A Breatharian is someone who has, as a result of extended fasting, totally exhausted all excess bodily fat and who has metabolized all excess bodily tissues. A Breatharian is one who is totally and thoroughly free, clean internally of all food-related toxins and therefore free from all chronic degenerative diseases related to the presence of such materials. A Breatharian is one who has no further need or desire or cravings for any so-called nutritional substances, foods, be they liquid or solid. A Breatharian, therefore, is one who no longer eats. If one eats, one is by definition not a Breatharian. Well, I tend to disagree, but it's all good. The Breatharian, because he takes no foods into the body, therefore, essentially, has no further need for water either, as water appears to be the cleanser. And since the stuff which is cleansed from the body, food products and their toxic byproducts, are no longer present in the body, there is essentially no further need for the cleanser, water. So, yeah, this is a very interesting take on Breatharianism. Of course, during this series, Pranic Pages, we've read so many books on just the concepts, the thought processes, the philosophies, the perception, the perspective, the reflection, the connection of what it is that, the words breath and air are in the word breatharian, right? Breatharian, we have breath and air. So I feel, and this is just my feeling, that by definition, a Breatharian is one who breathes. So if you can breathe, if you're breathing in air, if you're taking in oxygen, you're already a Breatharian. So to me, it doesn't take much to stretch the imagination to understand that if we're already living by the breath anyway, and when the body passes and we transition, the breath escapes the vessel and the vessel is still there. The solid matter is there, but the spirit is gone, the breath is gone. So the breath is life. Just like when someone is playing the flute, you're listening to their life. So going by this definition, I feel we can all fall into the category already, without any training, into the category of Breatharian. Now, the practice of pranic living, that is energy giving, that's another story. And it continues, the author talks more about food, and finally about his idea that one should ask for a help from the helpful spirit. And although I do like him and this concept, I still think that we need to take a more proactive approach to becoming food-free. And I will get to it later in this book. I also think it is really an intuitive concept. I was pondering food and our need to consume since I was young, even before I knew that there were people living happy lives while not eating. Can you imagine? And I know for a fact that most of people do think about eating less or not eating at all and things of that nature. Why else would weight loss be such a good business, right? Anyway, to give you a bit of insight, I first heard of food-free lifestyle while reading an article on the internet in 2002. Wow, years ago. Okay, 2002. Okay, it was over 2 decades. 2 decades ago. Golly. All right, Peter. It was about the newest crazy religious cults, and one of them was, of course, Breatharians, and Jasmuheen as their leader. It did not matter that she was no leader of anything, that there was not a single organized Breatharian group, let alone a registered church. Jasmuheen wrote a book about pranic nourishment, and therefore she is a crazy cult leader. That's how it went, basically, with a little joke that it is a perfect religion for anorexics. Well, needless to say, the article did not work on me as intended. And although I did not contact any of those other groups, I did my own research on Breatharianism and found out that it's actually a rather ancient concept, not a new age cult or even a new idea. In fact, it is something that has been practiced for thousands of years by thousands of people, and not just by the so-called holy men of India, but also by Catholic nuns, rabbis, Buddhists, and Jain monks, Islamic mystics, and last but not least, by the so-called fasting girls of the past centuries. We talked about that in Pranic Living Unveiled, the fasting girls. There is actually a free public domain book about the fasting girls, but it is written in the Old English. That is why it is a public domain, and it has a negative view towards these fasting girls. Through my research, I also found out that Jasmuheen is actually a rather nice woman from Australia who wrote a book about this, but does not run any cult, never did, and I doubt she ever will. Now let's address some of those frequently asked questions regarding Breatharianism and Inedia. Breatharian-related deaths. I would like to get this one cleared up first. It is, of course, always a terrible tragedy when life is lost unexpectedly. But let's not lose the context here. First of all, there were 5 deaths altogether as of April 2013 when I am writing this book. I get it. Now I see. So this book was written in 2013. And of course, even one death of a Breatharian follower would be one too many. But if you go to Wikipedia and read the Inedia page there, you will see a few things. The first is that for some reason, the authors blame all of these deaths on Jasmuheen. Born in 1957 as Ellen Grieve, an Australia-based proponent of pranic nourishment or Breatharianism. Really? Ellen Grieve, 1957. That's not too far from my mom was born. My mother was born in 1953. Dang, I did not know Jasmuheen she doing good for herself. Come on, Jasmuheen, you doing good for yourself. I can't hate on you. Why blame it all on her? Why? What is it about Jasmuheen? Why so much hate towards her? One couple actually went to jail for one of those deaths, and it seems to me that justifiably so, as they did ignore symptoms, withdrawal symptoms to be precise, and pushed through their own version of Breatharianism, not Jasmuheen's or anybody else's teachings. And in the end, their victim died of dehydration, not starvation. And that is also the case with those other 3 deaths. These poor people did not starve to death, but died of dehydration because they attempted to not just live without food, but also without any liquids. And that is completely dangerous, and I do not know anyone, especially not Mrs. Jasmuheen, who would recommend that you simply go to the mountains and stop drinking water just like that. So let's just remember that it was their sole idea to go and stop drinking. It is not in any of Jasmuheen's books, and not even on any of those free websites and blogs. You cannot become breatharian by stopping eating cold turkey, and it does go without saying that you just can't stop drinking water just like that. And then there is that sad case from Hungary where a pregnant woman died of malnutrition while following a light eater fast forced on the family by her husband, who was later remanded to a mental institution. The couple's 2 young children were also in dire straits when they were found. And obviously, that is a simply completely different case altogether. First and foremost, you cannot force someone to become a breatharian. They need to believe it first and then take it slow. There is no doubt that her husband was insane. You cannot force someone to stop taking foods, just like you cannot just stop drinking alcohol if you are an alcoholic, or stop taking heroin if you are a junkie. I really do not know how I could make this any clearer. Do not, I repeat, do not force people to stop taking food, no matter how much you know that food is just a drug. Don't force anyone, please. And the second problem in this case is that she was pregnant. I absolutely do not recommend, and I repeat again, I am not recommending that either a pregnant woman or a child ever try to become a breatharian. Now, it is perfectly possible that in the near future, we will know how to be a breatharian even when growing life in a woman's womb. But until then, it is not something to be tried. It is unnecessary even at this point in time. And that's interesting because, you know, Nabiha was actually letting me know that, and she said this on more than one occasion, but when she was carrying her daughter, Hannah, she didn't eat the whole pregnancy. She wasn't eating. So she carried her daughter to term without eating at all. So I think it's not as talked about, but it's more common than we realize, the ability to go without. But, you know, I'm not a woman, so, you know, I don't know all of that, but I've heard it done. So yes, 5 deaths in a course of 10 years. Is this a good point to pause and ask how many deaths occurred in the last, say, 10 months because of overeating, junk food, chemicals in food, or outbreaks of foodborne illnesses? I will leave the answer up to you, dear reader. Surely you know where I'm going with this. In no way do I want to make light of these tragedies, but on the other hand, I would hope that all that breatharian bashing everywhere on the internet and in the media would stop. And what's up with all that Jasmuheen bashing? Why picking on her? She never had any followers. She never ran any cult or church or group or anything of that sort. So sure, keep pointing out when something goes wrong, but let's not forget the other details. For instance, the fact that all of those who died while voluntarily attempting to become breatharian did not die of starvation. That would be quite important, a fact to remember for these future references. And another fact is that on a daily basis, there are more deaths related to food addiction and foodborne illnesses than those related to fasting, Inedia, and attempts to become breatharian in the last 100 years combined. Trust me, tens of thousands of people have attempted to become breatharian in just the last decade, and from those tens of thousands, thousands of them have succeeded, while the rest keep eating a little here and there for now. And that's all facts. Go to Wikipedia or Google, Bing, Yahoo, and company if you don't want to take my word for it. Chapter 3. Is there really any difference between breatharianism and anorexia? Yes, and rather a big difference. First of all, people suffering from anorexia and or bulimia still do believe they need food to survive. So this duality creates an inner conflict where, on the one hand, the person refuses to eat, food makes them physically sick and emotionally depressed, but on the other hand, their minds still tell them that they are going to die if they are not going to put solid food into their mouths anytime soon. None of this inner turmoil can be a good thing to a person's mind, no matter how old they are. And yet, more people try to become Anna and extremely skinny through all kinds of diets, and some of them are rather expensive programs. Then there are people who are attempting to become breatharian. It should be the other way around. It really breaks my heart when I read some of those pro-anorexic sites and discussion forums where all the people there seem to understand how bad the drug called food is for them and how it actually destroys their bodies and how depressed it makes them feel, but they do not have an idea how to replace the addictive solid foods with prana, water, and meditation. I have tried to reach out to some of them, but realized pretty quickly that it's just a virtual world of its own. Most of the people there are young females, and as such won't listen to some guy in his 30s. And then I also think most of them really are more interested in just writing about calories and weight, and eventually, and sadly, get into the mainstream way of thinking. It is a different mindset, which brings me to the second big difference, and that is that they are just focused on their body and not so much on their mind, spirit, and soul. It is a complete reverse for breatharians. The media plays a huge and hugely negative role in all of this confusion and suffering. On the one hand, there is constant bombardment of images featuring thin females, and males too, to some extent, in movies, TV shows, and commercials, constantly equating thinness with sexiness, and that with success. And on the other hand, censoring free speech when it comes to pro-ana websites and books, and keep telling how dangerous it is to eat too little. If only they would pick one side, right? Either way, anorexia and extreme dieting are about the body image. Breatharianism is first and foremost about the spirit. I do wish I could help, and maybe I will write a book just about breatharianism and pro-ana, but this is it for now and for this book. Chapter 4, what is the difference between starvation and breatharianism? Breatharians don't starve. This is not about starving yourself. You fast, first, just for a day or two at the time. Then you try to make those fasts longer. Say 4 to 7 days at a time, and the week or two, and so on. There is a big difference between fasting and starving. The most basic difference between starving and fasting is that the starving is a process, while fasting is a choice. You can be forced to starve, but not forced to fast. Fasting can be healthy, but starving cannot. Some people fast regularly and are able to function perfectly well while fasting. Being productive while starving is much more difficult. Some fasters can go for weeks without food and yet never feel hungry. Those who are overweight may go longer, whereas thin individuals might stop sooner, but a lot of this depends on how addicted to food a person is. It varies, and it gets better and easier with time and practice. While fasting is an essential part of one's journey towards being food-free, it is only a temporary. At one point, you simply won't take a break from your fast and just keep on going. Which kind of brings us to the following question, and that is, Why do we have a stomach and digestive tract? That's almost like the question of what came first, the egg or the chicken? Do we eat because we have a stomach and intestine and such, or do we have all those internal organs of the digestive tract precisely because we eat in the first place? I do believe, and I'm definitely not alone in this belief, that the stomach and company developed later on as humans degenerated slightly from their godlike status. Very interesting. Simply said, as humans started eating more, taking on food and getting addicted to it, and then having to eat yet more of it, then their bodies had to deal with all this foreign substance, and we developed digestive tract and system. Wow. It is a known fact that stomachs of Westerners are bigger than that of those in developing countries. Interesting. It is also a known history that people used to eat much less just a few hundred years ago, I believe that, let alone few thousand years back. And if we go back in history, to which we still have records of, then we will know that our ancestors, some 5,000 to 10,000 years ago, were basically vegetarians, and even then they were eating less than today's vegetarians in the West. And then they had to burn much more calories back in those days too. So yes, the digestive system is a relative thing, and if you have it, then it's because you eat, not the other way around. The good thing is that this unnatural process can be reversed. If you start your breatharian journey, you will eat less. That goes without saying. And as you eat less and less, your stomach will get smaller and smaller. Stomach, intestines, and everything else in your current digestive system. And what will happen once you become a breatharian and won't take any solid foods whatsoever? Your digestive tract will shrink ever so more and eventually disappear completely. Yes, it will. And it's something that happened to a lot of people, including me. See my pictures. Interesting. What will take place? Well, let's not forget, you still need to get the energy and nutrition in a different form, and that form is a pranic energy, which can be accessed through meditation, breathing exercises, and yoga, etc. Now, I want to pause right here to just ponder on what Peter just said here about the digestive system shrinking, the stomach shrinking, everything shrinking. And what I'm thinking when he talks about shrinking, because I've heard this as well from Genesis Sunfire, you know him as Jericho Sunfire. And he talked in an interview about how these people don't want you to know that the stomach can shrink back to like its original form. And I do feel that when I was going during some of my longest prolonged periods of dry fasting, just no food, no water at all, when I wasn't drinking, consuming, or even thinking about food, or even having a craving, or even, depriving myself, I was really just thriving on energy. I did feel like there was a physical change, even though, nobody took a video camera and went into my body to look at what was going on in my organs. I felt like there was a change. Like there was a change for sure. And I could feel it because I no longer craved food. So perhaps, all the parasites were gone, all the organisms. But also, I didn't even feel like I needed it. Like I felt like there was a conviction that I can, like Jerome, you can go on like this. Like we can keep going. It was like my body was just telling me like, hey, it's okay. Like you can let go, it's okay. Like we got this. Like we can thrive on energy. And all I was doing was I was just exercising. I was walking every day. I was doing Qigong. I was working with energy. I was breathing. I was meditating. All I was doing, this was my food pyramid, And I remember just being, I always remember the sensation of walking down downtown Los Angeles and being around all these people that were just so obsessed and so just food was always on their minds, you know, just passing KFC and Popeyes and Wendy's and Mickey D's and Burger King and feeling free, just completely free from the shackles, from the chains of it all. And then even passing luxurious hotels and luxurious restaurants and lavish, you know, places where people are just paying hundreds of dollars just to sit down and eat, you know? And I felt so free from it all. Just like, I have all that I need. Like, in the air that I breathe, I have all that I need. Working with Chi, I have all that I need. And it was just blowing my mind. And day after day, my body kept telling me, hey, we're good. Like, if you go back, it's okay. It's a choice. It's a choice. So I feel what he's saying when he's talking about things shrinking and changing, because it definitely felt like my body was rearranging itself to be more of an air animal and less of an earth animal. Let's not forget, you still need to get the energy and nutrition in a different form, and that form is a pranic energy, which can be accessed through meditation, breathing, and yoga, etc. What will start playing a much bigger role in your body is the system of chakras. The most important one is going to be the solar plexus chakra, which is the most important for receiving the life force. Interesting, the solar plexus. The new food, if you will. The bottom line is that the stomach is not a normal part of your body. It is unnatural, really. The stomach is an abnormal inflation designed to store excess food until your digestive tract can deal with it. When you fast or stop eating, it shrinks back to its original tubular state, allowing your solar plexus directly behind your stomach to start beating again. Whoa, okay. All right, Peter, we cooking. As you can see on this graphic, there, as 7 chakras, the solar plexus chakra will basically take up the space and the function of the stomach and of the whole digestive tract, in fact. It is going to be your new stomach, and prana is going to be your new food. Wow, I totally believe that. That's definitely what it felt like. Meditation time will be your new meal time. Wow, this is really reminiscent. You won't need to go to the grocery store or do any greasy food pickup or go to a restaurant for it. No dishes, no more detergents in the water, and of course, no animal slaughter, and so on. But I'm getting ahead of myself here a bit. The point being, first, humans very likely did not have a stomach. There would be no reason that we would need it. There is no reason we need it. You won't miss it, trust me. Homer Simpson of the future generations will say, prana, trust me. And he has a diagram here of the body. Here's just a little diagram that Peter shows of the chakra system. You can see that right here in the book. Question number 5 here. Wiley Brooks, Jasmine and Company. Okay, let's first start with Mr. Wiley Brooks, founder of the Breatharian Institute of America and of the eponymous website of breatharian.com, which is, or ever was, not really about Inedia, but more about living in different dimensions and stuff. Now, we already read Wiley Brooks' book on the Pranic Pages playlist, his book, Breathe and Live Forever, Breatharianism by Wiley Brooks and Nancy Foss. So you can check that out on the playlist after this if you like. He was probably the very first Westerner, definitely the first American, to popularize the concept of living without food. He got to be interviewed on TV, appeared in New Age seminars, etc. He was first introduced to the public in 1980 when appearing on the TV show That's Incredible, where he did some weightlifting trick. He could lift a lot of weight for a skinny guy that was eating close to nothing. Unfortunately, he got caught eating junk food, no less, repeatedly during the year 1983, I think. And that was it for our Wiley the Breatharian, and also pretty much for the Breatharian concept in North America. Now, I feel like I don't judge people who eat, period. You know, it's a choice. My message is letting people know they have a choice. That's my message. So eat or don't eat, that's never an issue for me. Do whatever you want, but realize it's a choice, like not a necessity. I think that's the message that I mostly try to get across to people who feel like if they don't eat, they'll die. That's the message. But no judgment if you do eat. That's your prerogative. What's not widely known is the fact that before he was called a fraud, Wiley did inspire countless of people to fast, change their diets, fast some more, and some of those folks eventually did become breatharians. I do not think that there ever was a single starvation death related to Wiley and his teachings. On the other hand, I know of about 12 to 20 people who are still active on the net and who are breatharians since the 80s when they met him. Wiley Brooks resurfaced in the late 90s, but this time he limited his sphere of influence to the virtual world. Few people met him. I talked to him on the phone once, but with the exception of 1 or 2 YouTube videos with him, he wasn't really interested in cameras and all that attention. I don't blame him. And this focus seems to be more about aliens. His focus now seems to be more about aliens, space travel, dimensions, Armageddon, etc. He lived for decades in the desert in Utah and did not claim he does not eat, although there were no grocery stores or restaurants anywhere near where he lived. He says that he cannot be too healthy in order to survive in the current world, and I think there is something to that theory. YouTube has several videos of him graciously giving interviews. The best, in my opinion, is titled The Fascinating Wiley Brooks. Watch it when you have a time. I have been following his website since around the year 2002, and he used to change the topic on it on a regular basis. When I saw it the first time around, he was all about UFOs. But it should also be noted that his website was being, and maybe still is, hacked on a regular basis, and the content of it changed by the hackers. Now, April 2013, he has pictures of himself there, living in what appears to be a homeless shelter, and Wiley seems to be sick with some skin condition. He's around 70 years old now, in any case. So I do respect him as a sort of breatharian pioneer in the North America, and a lot of the general information about breatharian lifestyle comes from him. Hira Ratan Manek, or as some people know him as HRM, we talked about this in one of the chapters from one of my books we just read. HRM, born 12 September 1937, claims that since 18 June 1995, he has lived on water and occasionally tea, coffee, and buttermilk. HRM is mostly known as the proponent of sun gazing, where one gets the needed energy from the sun. Obviously, that is something that is not easy to do and can be quite harmful, but Hira was subjected to at least 3 well-recorded studies where he would fast for 103, 401, and 411 days, respectively. I don't know about you, but those numbers look pretty impressive to me. However, HRM was also caught eating while visiting the USA, caught on camera in San Francisco. Now, I for one believe him when he says that it's impossible to fast while being around people who eat, and we know Americans will eat pretty much anything. It may sound like a lousy excuse, but it's true. Just try it. I know it is much easier to fast while being alone or with other like-minded people than when being forced to mingle with people who eat while driving, eat while walking, can't wait to eat when in feeding designated places like restaurants, and demand to be fed immediately some appetizer or at least free bread. Remind me of Olive Garden and those breadsticks years ago, my goodness. Demanding to at least some appetizer or at least free bread immediately. It is a feeding madness. So that's what I think happened here with Mr. Hira Manek. He comes to the USA to talk about sun gazing and living without food, but all of those negative energies that are emitted by everyone who eats. Of course, it is worse with meat eaters than vegans or even vegetarians, but not by that much. Now think about it. If he would know he cannot really fast and will have to have his 3 meals a day, why would he risk all of that hard work, all of those tests and observations in hospitals, if he would know it's going to end? This is someone who has been documented to not eat for more than a year on 3 occasions. Why would he decide to stop now? It is extremely hard to be a breatharian in America. All of this gluttony and overeating and then crazy dieting and losing weight, but still eating healthy. Now that's an oxymoron. That's like saying, smoke some healthy stuff instead of cigarettes. Then we just repeat all of that. It has to stop. And then, in the end, one visit to a foodie mecca of USA, San Francisco, even a guy who has been a breatharian for decades can get sucked in. This is an absolute madness. And man, do I hate foodies. They are so obnoxious with their food obsessions. Now, I don't hate foodies. That's a very strong word. We're not about trying to create division among people who eat. Certainly I'm not. It's just about the awareness of, what you need to thrive. And everyone has their own different awareness. Now, Miss Jasmine, she lives in Australia. But when it comes to food addiction, there isn't much difference between Australia and the US, of course. I wouldn't know. I've never been to Australia yet. But we got some friends in Australia. Shout out to my sister Eloise and my brothers in Australia. She had done the most work around breatharianism, prana nourishment, and all the related topics. Wrote dozens of books, regularly releases meditation albums on MP3 and CD and so on. And let me just pause right there for a second. I have Miss Jasmine to thank for a lot of my, you could call it transition and even transcendence when it came to the realm of pranic living, finding the energy that is giving, days when I was fasting and just finding what was longer lasting for me. I listened over and over on repeat every time I would meditate. I remember I was in a studio apartment, downtown Los Angeles, living with a group. It was like eight or nine of us in bunk beds in this one studio apartment. And I would sit down every single day with Jasmuheen's meditations. I was reading Food of the Gods. I was listening to Elitam while I was doing Qigong. And that was when I first had my Kundalini awakening, was after meditating for like almost an hour with Jasmuheen and doing Qigong. That I had a Kundalini explosion in my body. It was electricity running up and down my spine, up and down. And this was after listening to one of Jasmuheen's meditations. So maybe there's some activation. So I've even put a whole playlist of the exact meditations that I used in our Patreon. Patreon.com/pranicpath for anyone who wants to check out those meditations on Jasmuheen. Lately, she has been involved in promoting planetary peace and defeating hunger, both spiritual and physical. And I think she said all hungers. Yeah, I remember in her book she was talking about all hunger. There would be peace on earth if more people would know how to live without the need to consume solid foods, because people are running out of space to grow it, to fish for it, and to raise it. I simply love this woman, Jasmuheen. You probably got the idea if you read the dedication. And I think she does so much good. I agree. Go to her official website at jasmuheen.com and see for yourself if she is as evil as some of the media try to portray her. And make sure you get yourself a few of the free ebooks and see her YouTube channel. Read her poetry and so much more. The books and albums that she sells are all very cheap and affordable, and she also makes wonderful music. She has such a lovely voice, she does. There are 2 music albums out in digital form on iTunes and Amazon. Dang, Jasmine, you got albums? Okay, Jazz. Okay, Jazz. She got albums. She putting out that heat for the streets. No need to eat. She got heat for the streets. I have them both, and oh, you got the mixtape? And they are great to take for a walk. Let the sounds and vibrations nourish you. Yes, it works that way. Meditate to them or just dance. I love that woman. She is simply awesome, a modern day saint if you ask me. But for some reason, she is a target of the most vicious attacks against pranic nourishment. Much love. Against pranic nourishment, and I never understood exactly why. Jasmine says she wants people to know about prana and its ability to give us nourishment. She gets called a liar. She says she wants world peace and harmony. Well then, she is a cult leader. Why? Why so much of negativity? What is it good for? To bring her down? That's why it's all done to her. But she is strong. She is a strong, brave woman, and I admire her so much for all that she does and the way that she deals with all of the nastiness and adversity. And I'll definitely say she is a strong woman. Even though I haven't met her yet in the physical, we have not met each other. I've also heard stories that Eli Tom would tell me away from everyone else. He would tell me stories about Jasmine and his opinion on Jasmine when he was in her presence. And he said, yeah, Jerome, that woman is strong. She ain't nothing to play with. Jasmine is the real one, for real. She a real one. I was like, okay. You know, don't take her niceness for weakness, right? She once volunteered to undergo a test of sorts for an Australian TV station. It can be found on YouTube, and it still gets used as a proof that humankind has no other future than to eat itself to an Armageddon. Please don't watch it. It is just awful what they did to her. The tone of the producers was negative and arrogant on set, and it's clear they wanted her to fail. And again, everybody around her was eating 5 times a day. Same things I described with Hira's case. She had to stop it after a few days because of the negativity that was just too much. She never did any of this TV circus again, and I don't blame her a bit. Media, whether TV, radio, magazine, newspapers, have no incentive to break to the world that's perfectly possible, or rather enjoyable, to live without food. Just the opposite. The majority of ads are about food and beverages, alcohol, and weight loss programs. And the rest is simply connected to all the materialism. If even half of people would start living on prana, what kind of ads would all these outlets sell? Meditation CDs and yoga classes? Yeah, that would be it. See what I mean? It is all connected. And we all have to be strong, like Jasmine. So that's it for the big 3, the big 3 on Breatharianism. If you do a web search, you will see some other names, I'm sure. And yeah, of course, we've seen so many other names. Elitam, Raki Chari, Ray Mayor, Akai Ricardo, Christiana El Chayan, Swami Bai or Victor Triviano, you know, so many people. So the list is growing, and I believe that there are way more people that don't speak about it than the people that do speak about it. Way more. Use your own judgment. I'm not saying that everyone who claims to be living without food is not making stuff up, but you can trust one thing. For every one person who is famous or infamous for their ability to live on prana, there are at least 100 of people who are happily living without taking any solid foods and at the same time not bragging about it. Exactly, I just said that, wow. That's why you don't even know about them yet. But once you'll get involved, research more, talk with others in forums and groups, you will get to know them and the power of like-minded groups of folks, even if connected only digitally. And here's a picture of Peter, the author of this book. Here's just a picture of Peter right there, Peter the Breatharian. So that's what he looks like. Let me throw that there. That's him. Is this all another New Age cult? Answer, no it is not. And it never has been. There were people who tried to turn it into some sort of organized cult-like group, but it never caught on. Jazz Maheen gets called a cult leader most often. It does not matter that she never even thought about anything like that. It is just a wishful thinking. They, mostly media, would love a foul story where dozens of people would die while being in some sort of Breatharian cult. Luckily, no luck for them. Now, in some way, it would be easier for us to function, get together, and do outreach and charitable work if we would, in fact, be a registered religion, if not eating or eating very little and mostly liquids would be the main part of your religious practice. Well then, that practice, in this case not eating, practicing meditation, yoga, etc., would be a protected belief and a spiritual practice. And if I'm not mistaken, fasting is in pretty much all of the major religions. They have something, they say something about fasting in all of the world's major religions. If I'm not mistaken. You can correct me if I'm wrong. You should not be harassed for practicing it, or even your belief in the life without food, while slowly walking on the path towards the food-free life would be your protected belief. And that's something worth thinking about. But we would have to be smart about running this Breatharian church as to not give a slight suspicion that we are in some doomsday cult or plan to hop on some comet that will fly by. The matter of fact still is that this is a belief system. I believe that I don't need food. I believe that food does not give me life. And that is my spiritual or religious, if you want, belief. Some of you, or at least people that you know, believe in the opposite. Just try it. Ask someone what they think is going to happen to them if they don't eat for, let's say, a few days. Right off the bat, they'll say, oh, I'll get seriously ill. And that's not even asking them what will happen to them if they don't eat for a whole month. Most people will say without hesitation, we will die if we don't put food into our mouths. And you know what? They're kind of right. They would get sick and probably die because it's all in their minds. According to this theory about food and life, I should be dead at least 20 times over, and yet here I am writing a cheap ebook. Okay, Peter, you got jokes. Okay, Peter, I like that. Here I am writing a cheap ebook. So I see a hole or two in this food theory. How about you? I think it's very important to do an outreach and explain all of this to as many people as we can reach. Sort of in Breatharian evangelical work. But I kind of mean it. All jokes aside, while it's easier to fast and not eat for months, if one lives alone somewhere in the mountains or a desert or an island in the middle of nowhere, it also does not help our cause in any way. Media and experts are still going to be calling us nutcases. And the outside world is still going to be helplessly addicted to food, still emitting the food-associated negative vibrations, and as such, it is still going to be hard for even the purest Breatharian being to stay around those people who eat for any longer period of time. The world would be just a nicer place if there would be more Breatharians, and not to mention that the world would also be hunger-free. Which brings me to the next frequently asked question, number 7, which is, why don't all you Breatharians go to Africa and teach them to be Breatharians? Because we would still be ridiculed, and people in different regions or different poor regions have no idea about Inedia, let alone any knowledge about yoga, meditation, chakras, and so on. And just a side note, I've talked to people who actually were born in, the continent of Africa in different places like Nigeria and other places, and they were telling me, you know, brother, like, you Americans, like, y'all have no idea. You know, people aren't starving out here like that, like you think they are. You know, we got whole civilization, we got much more in Africa than you think we do. So he kind of squashed that myth for me, being that he was, you know, raised there, born there, and he's seen what goes on. Like, he's seen the misinformation. In the West, they still believe they need food in order to survive, and while they can survive on much less than most people here in the West, they still have this old damaging belief system. Plus, most of their misery is caused by corrupt governments. Then by the global weather crisis, which in turn is caused by overfishing, overharvesting, creating waste, killing trees and everything that breathes in order to feed humans' addictions. So, how about all the smart asses take a break from asking us the same old questions and work on consuming and wasting less, and start believing in the global warming start believing in global warming being caused by humans would be a good start too. Then we can all hold hands and sing Kumbaya and go to Africa and give advice. But until then, next question, please. Question number 8. But animals eat? You noticed. Yes, they certainly do. But I also noticed that we are not just another animal. We seem to be much more complex, capable of thought process, speech, and complex thinking. At least most of us appear to. We have a sense of soul and God. We pray, we meditate, we think about things, we ponder what we eat, and if we really need food, and we think about what to eat. Animals don't do any of that. They eat what their kind always ate and don't really sweat it. While we are animals and we share this planet with all of them, we are still more than any of them. We are capable of more than just eating, having a bowel movement, and repeating it every day for several decades. Everybody knows that for some reason, when it comes to eating and taking food, most of people will be more than happy to regress to the most basic animal instincts. It is rather sad when you really think about it. And if you really feel so close to your animal kin, how about stop eating them? Now that's a concept, and it brings me to yet another question or argument, and that isn't being vegan good enough? No, not really. Sorry. Now don't get me wrong. It is always easier for me and other breatharians to be around vegans and raw vegans and people like that. And being a vegan, and then raw vegan, and then fruitarian is an important step towards breatharianism. But don't take veganism as an excuse to not grow further. Don't forget, vegans are still addicted to food. Now let me just take a pause. When I was in the Texas Fruit Festival just recently in Austin, Texas here, you know, people were asking me, you know, what is my diet? What is my lifestyle? And a lot of times I'll just say, you know, vegan, you know, I'll just tell them I'm vegan. I don't tell them anything about I don't eat or nothing. I'll just be like vegan. Because seriously, like that's a line that I won't go past. But there was nothing there was no separation when it came to me, like having conversations with other vegans, you know, raw vegans, fruitarians, whatever. Even though I'm not putting any fruit in my body, I can still be with everybody who is doing the same thing. So, yeah, that will be something that I usually tell people. I usually don't even bring up the word breatharian or the word pranic or the word. I just say I'm vegan, you know, like, and that actually stops people from offering me certain things. They're like, "Oh, you're vegan?" Yeah, I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, okay, my bad, right? So I like saying I'm vegan. I mean, I'm not lying. Don't take veganism as an excuse to not grow further. Don't forget, vegans are still addicted to food. Sure, they eat less and much more consciously, but they still eat. Still think food gives them life and are rather obsessed with food and eating. And some of them have this holier-than-thou attitude, and rather a big number of them is not really interested in spirituality and spiritual growth. Green politics? Sure, and that's a good thing. But belief in faith-based healing, pranic nourishment, not so much. Not all of them, of course. It's just I have some friends and have some vegan roommates. That is my experience. That being said, being vegan is always a better choice than being only a vegetarian, of course. But all of these diet lifestyles should really be seen as simply a stepping stone to the higher self. Next question, sleep and breatharianism. Let's talk about it. Well, if you don't eat, then you don't need much sleep. And that's something you are going to notice even during the first few days of fasting. Your body demands rest through sleep because it needs to in order to help the stomach get rid of toxins you put into yourself during the course of the day. Sleep is, in a way, a temporary death. Did you know that we as humans are not really meant to sleep? At least not those 6 to 8 or more hours that we are told that we need. In its original and untempered state, the human body is a dynamo of energy and activity. Only when we are eating, and eating badly, we become slow and lethargic. This in turn leads to the polluting of our environment. And much of our energy is spent eliminating all of the poisons that we eat, drink, and breathe. Or absorb on a daily basis. And the best way for the body to do this is to put you to sleep so it can do its work uninterrupted. Just think about it for a minute. How many animals sleep as much as humans do? There are several species on the planet that never sleep. And then others that sleep very little. So why would it be so unnatural for humans to require only, say, 1 to 3 hours of sleep per night? This is one of the things you are going to notice, that the less you eat, the more energy you have. You will have withdrawal symptoms. Food is a drug after all, so why expect anything else? But you won't have a need to sleep it off for 7 or more hours. And once those nasty food withdrawal symptoms stop, then you will be able to enjoy more energy all day and night too. And a clear mind. Next question. But how to get there? Believe. Know that life does not come from food, especially food made through killing. What sense this theory makes anyway. Believe that it's possible to live without food. Be sure of it. Know that food is just a drug. Put in your head, food is a drug. Think about this. Anything you put in your mouth and it makes you temporarily happy, but will bring you down afterwards, is a drug. Let me repeat that. Anything you put in your mouth and makes you temporarily happy, but will give you or bring you down afterwards, is a drug. And anything you do more than once because you feel you have to, is a habit. Why would food be any different? It is a drug, and food eating is a habit that needs to be kicked. Tell this yourself on a daily basis. Ponder all of this, question all of the theories, and you will see the truth of it in no time. Chant and repeat, I do not need any food, and be sure of it. Practice yoga to help open your chakras. If you live in a bigger city or town, look for yoga studios in your area. Sign up for classes in advance, as opposed to the pay-as-you-go, so you stay motivated. If you can find a studio that offers one of those hot yoga classes, then do those, because that will help you eliminate toxins even faster. But do any yoga or Pilates or breathing exercise and meditation you can find. Go and get a Reiki treatment, or find yourself a yoga teacher and do private lessons with him or her. Yes, it costs money, but remember, you're spending less on food now, right? You can even take online classes from home if you live in yoga and meditation desert. Or contact me and we will set something up. Thanks, Peter. Thank you. Spend some time outside. Yes, yes. Go for a walk, best if barefoot, so you can get energy from the earth. Get energized and rooted. Get back to your roots. Find like-minded people in your area, even through a website like Craigslist. Get together for chats, walks, advice, and mutual support. It's important. Stay connected to each other, even if it's only on the internet. Help people understand. Hold hands, even if it's only virtually. And fast. Practice fasting. Now, I'll definitely say I have a big thanks for technology keeping people like myself connected with people like yourself and people all over the world who practice pranic living. If it weren't for technology, if it weren't for Instagram, I wouldn't have been able to speak. At least, I don't feel I would have been given the opportunity that I was to be able to speak at the Pranic World Festival for all those years in a row, and even to travel to Italy and live with a friend in Italy and then be at the festival in Italy and then travel Italy and then just go to different places. And then there was even a friend who let me stay with her in Switzerland, and then I went and got to visit family members for the first time in my life in Sweden, and then went to Germany, and all this stuff just off of the back of me traveling to Italy to go speak at the festival. Like, that's all through technology. So, it's a different perspective, but it can keep us connected, if we use it with a different directive, right? If you have a different objective, for sure. Start with 1 day a week fasting. Set aside 1 day a week, preferably when you're not working, as a day of fasting, and experience firsthand the many benefits that it has to offer, which no other discipline can give you. First-timers can take the 24-hour fast and drink water if need be, whereas experienced fasters can go the full 36 with or without water. Alternative day fasting, 1 day yes and 1 day no, is also a very effective way of fasting. Change your diet to vegetarian and or vegan, but don't stop there. When you feel ready, go to a raw vegan mode, then fruitarian, then try to consume just liquids and see what comes next. Now, I'll say for myself, I went straight from eating everything to eating nothing at all. So it was a bit extreme. Some people will say that's a bit extreme. And I'm a Scorpio, so they say we're extreme. But in my opinion, I was already living extreme. The stuff I was consuming, not only the quality, but the quantity, the sheer quantity and the level of consumption that I had years ago, that was extreme. So we'll just breathe on that. You can feel my energy. Do longer fasting each weekend, for instance. Play with it. See what works best at the given time. Don't rush it. Read up on this and all the related topics. See what Jasmine recorded for a new meditation album. Purchase it and let it nourish you. Don't be afraid of this. If you need to take a break, your body and your guardian angel will tell you to take a break. Don't worry. Listen to them and it will go fine. Remember that dormant organs will reawaken. Your body is always trying to revert to its original non-eating state. But we keep interfering by eating again to stifle those hunger pangs, which are part of the withdrawal process. This hunger fades after 3 to 4 days, after which the regeneration process begins in earnest. Muscles contract, organs shrink, and the inside of your abdomen basically reconfigures to set up an electrical dynamo that makes you feel light as air, yet strong as steel. Wow, I love this description. Dormant organs, which up until now appeared to serve no purpose, reawaken to give you extrasensory power or ability. This process takes 2 to 4 weeks after the complete cessation of eating. And if anybody wants to see a video of me when I was in my 5-day dry, I've done tons of documentation, but there's a video of me in particular where I recall I was 5 days in a dry state going into a pranic retreat. If you want to see that video, shoot me a DM and I'll send it to you. And I definitely felt exactly what Peter is talking about here. Embrace hunger and see it as a sign of cleansing. Remember that all breatharians can do it all. A breatharian is someone who gets all of their nourishment from air and light and love. A few thousand strong worldwide, they are the forerunners of what all of us will one day become: an immortal and self-sustaining humanity. An immortal and self-sustaining humanity. And he says a few thousand strong, and this was written back in 2013, so you can imagine we're in the year 2024 at the time of this recording. When you stop polluting your body with food and toxic drinks, pure water is fine. A cleansing and healing process takes place, restoring you from the animal state to your original divine state. In this pristine and high vibratory state, all of your powers are augmented tenfold, and you become superhuman. Your thought processes become computer-like, your psychic senses unfold, and you will have enough strength to lift 10 times your own weight. You will require little or no sleep. You will easily resist extremes in temperature. You may never get sick and will have stopped or even reversed the aging process. So shout out to Benjamin Button. We got Benjamin Buttons out here aging backwards. Perhaps best of all, you will always be happy and confident and clear as to who you are or where you are going in life. While not everyone can become a breatharian just yet, it will become an increasing trend in this 21st century. Breatharians can do it all. All right. And that is a wrap. Okay. Blessings. Much love. Love and light. Peter the Breatharian. Jay. Shout out to Peter the Breatharian. Oh man, that was awesome. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for glistening. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Keep the grateful, thankful spirit. And I trust that the rest of your life and the best of your life will be like the breath of your life. Much love. And check out that website for you. One more time, that website is patreon.com/pranicpath with tons of audios, tons of videos, tons of books for your reading pleasure as well as your visual and auditory pleasure. It is always a treasure. And shout out to all of our Patreon supporters who are supporting on Patreon and getting all the goodies that we have there. And I'm currently releasing so many things. Right now, we've been going on a roll with the Pranic message in the Solarian series. So we have fictional books now on the back of non-fictional books, which you have on Amazon for you. You just type in my name, Jerome Shaw, on Amazon. You'll see the full catalog of my books there for you. So blessings to you, my friend. Take care. It is never the end. Pranic living is not just a new trend. Appreciate the time that we spend. Much love, and I'll see you again.